Hello, Phalonians. I'm Lore Master Matt,
And I'm Phelan John.
and welcome to the Bellringers. From time to time, we're going to record a series on a special topic, and you'll find that in these sessions, the Bellringers. The Lord Mayor of Teradim, Varain Qualtara, employs many young people, generally waifs and strays like John and I, to roam throughout Teradim, ringing a bell and shouting proclamations from the Lord Mayor or the news of the day. Besides a daily stipend, bell ringers are often stopped on the streets by the affluent of Teradim and asked to give the news to them personally, for which they receive a copper or two for their time. We are your bell ringers, and today the news is a starting point for lore in your journey through the world of Phalon.
All right, today we're starting a brand new faction. We're going to talk about the history and government of Koronna. And Koronna has always been near and dear to John's heart. And so, John, why don't we start by going through a little bit of the history of Koronna?
Okay, so for those of you joining us late, when the Trazorite Empire took over from the Kryjan Empire, it was an internal rebellion, and the Trazorites replaced the Kryjan. The Kryjan had effectively conquered all of the southern continent and a slice of the northern continent along the southern coast from the Marne Caves on the westernmost tip, all the way around to the mountains that are now the border. Well, actually, past the mountains of the border of Kandor with Thormanol, and to the basically to the where the city of Kandor is today. That was Kryjan territory. Then, as the Trazorites internally conquer the Kryjan and kick them out of power, that becomes Trazorite territory. So that big swath. The high water mark in the west is what is now the Archbarony of Tlar and Falkar and the Moonshadow Mountains in the city of Torenna. They get as far as what is now Castle Bastelar in Haradel, but they don't have that piece very long for a lot of reasons. And Kandor in the east. And Koronna is the last piece of that property on the northern continent that the Trazorites owned. And the Koronnans become independent of the Trazorite Empire in the year 86. Now, also for those of you joining us late, the calendar, for better or for worse, that is the main calendar we use to talk about years. There are many calendars of Phalon, is the Falkarian calendar that sets the year one as the year in which the first Falkarian king is crowned. So this is 86 years after Falkar becomes a kingdom. And before either Thormanol becomes the League of Thormanol or Haradel becomes the Kingdom of Haradel. Just kind of keep that in mind as the setting under which we're operating here. So the kingdom becomes the Kingdom of Falkar, takes away the provinces in the west, and a combination of Simkur pressure from the east, spilling over those mountains into what is now Thormanol, and Valor pressure from the north spilling over those mountains, turns all these pieces of property, what is now Thormanol, into tiny little independent city-states constantly fighting amongst themselves, and eventually stop being effective Trazorite provinces over time. So in the year 86, the only thing left on the north continent that belongs to the Trazorite Empire is the province of, that has another name. I'm not looking at it in my notes, but it's not called Koronna at the time. And so that's the background under which this, independence movement takes place. And what's interesting about that is the leaders of the eventual final rebellion that overthrows the Trazorite governor in what is now Koronna and turns Koronna independent, an independent country, independent nation, is a man and wife, a moon's priest and priestess pair, as you'd probably imagine, back when that was something that was secret and new and not, a long-standing part of this country's government. as an irony, these two people, Kerim, Kerim is the male, and Talina, and this relationship, Talina, the original Moon's priest and Moon's priestess that become the first caliph and khalifa, essentially, and it has long been argued whether it was deliberate or not, use the same pattern for overthrowing Koronna and taking it for themselves and their followers and adherents that the Trasrite Empire used to overthrow the Krajan Empire, although on a grander scale, meaning a combination of religious fervor in a new religion that had a lot more to potentially offer its adherents than the existing religion that was the Sun religion, the religion of Runa in the province at the time that the independence movement took place. And these two are merchants that traveled extensively in Feyerler lands, so they become influenced by that. They see people operating together where man and woman are essentially equals. All the different genders are equals, and not the and this is controversial, right? I mean, not I was going to say archaic, Matt, but we have to remember that there is a very strong movement in the Trasrite Empire of Trasrite women who think that people looking for equality is crazy talk, because they enjoy the pedestal around, hey, I can't own a business. Why would I want to do that? I got all these men working for me, so, so it's not cut and dry. That's a theme I've talked about it before in the podcast, that it's not, black and white, right? There's arguments on both sides. The Eclipse doesn't see it that way. The Koronans don't see it that way, but there are a large number of people living in the Trasrite Empire perfectly happy with the situation they're in. So, these two are part of a secret sect of Moon's worshippers. They're originally merchants, and they are influenced by priests and priestesses of Valia in the countries that they go in, and the Erdogar equivalent in those lands that haven't civilized yet, and come back in with, hey, we've landed on the side of equality, and this is how we're going to go about it. So in the year 86, they and their followers overthrow the current Trasrite government, and do so with a great deal of Feyler help, because the kingdom of Falkar and the Feylers living in what becomes eventually Herodel and Thormanol are all, more than happy to help throw out the Trasrites. So they had no issue with that. So it wasn't just their because the Trasrite Empire has a great deal of resources. They probably couldn't have done it by themselves. Sort of the same thing that happens with the Trasrites fighting the Krajan. They make a deal with the Mershale, and the Mershale help them in their overthrow of the Krajan Empire. It's kind of the same pattern. So that's where it all starts.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the government that they set up to run this new country, this new idea of equality, but under Moon's worshiping.
Yeah, so it's what's called a dual regency. There's a husband and wife who rule as caliph and khalifa. It's as much traditional as it is necessary. It's not necessarily necessary that's that way, but that's their tradition. They are the heads of state and the commanders in chief of the Koronna armed forces. They rule from the capital city of Malazan. They're selected or elected by the conclave of wolves and owls, a body of senior Moon's priests and Moon's priestesses. And the conclave is formed to select a new husband and wife team that will take over as caliph and khalifa. It is not necessarily, and pretty much can't be, perfectly hereditary, because We don't want interbreeding. So if it's a husband and wife team, right, it might be that the son of a caliph and khalifa marries someone and the two of them are elected, but that's not does happen, but it's not required to be that way, you know. But typically they are a pair of people that serve or have served some part of their lives in the Towers of the Moons, which is the main temple of the Moon's religion in Koronna that's built upon the secret hideout that these two original rebellion leaders used as their base during the overthrow of the Trezorites.
Very good. And so, does that hold up today? Do they have the same kind of government that they have today that they did then? And did they have any problems forming that government that was based on, a relatively new religion, or were the people very happy with it?
The people are generally very happy with it, and it has survived to this day. So 900 years or so. Um, the uh, the country is divided into korodads, provinces, essentially smaller provinces, and husband and wife teams rule those also. Okay, selected by the priests and priestesses of their um, korodad and approved by the caliph and khalifa. So they're like governors, the esharks, the leaders of these korodads are governors. So that's all survived. And I think it could be said that one of the reasons why it survived so long is because the Trezorites are constantly exerting external pressure to the point where there's no long downtime for Koronna to relax, and maybe devolve into, complacency, right? And some of the kinds of things that happen when a government no longer, serves its people directly. The fact that it's absolutely the stated policy of the Trezorite Empire to retake, the southern coast of the northern continent, starting with this place, and they try several times, and they're about to try again. So that external threat has served probably more than anything else. They set up an effective form of government, and they had a couple of successful, civilizations to pattern their choice of pros and cons, their choice of best practices and worst practices on at that point. Earlier attempts by earlier countries didn't have that, to maybe fall back on as much as they did. So, it survived the whole time, and doesn't really. If they have issues, one of their issues is their government isn't about to fall apart. I guess that's the way to say it.
That always helps. All right. Well, next time we're going to talk about the Coronan military, and we're going to talk about the Coronan religion in a little more detail. So thank you all for listening into these. We hope you're enjoying these Bellringers as we kind of scoot through the different factions and talk about them and get a little more in-depth look at their lore and their history. We thank you all very much for listening, and until next time, we'll see you around the table.
See you around the table.